Okay, my name is Joe Thompson. I'm currently employed by Otimo. Rob and I work together on all this container stuff. Been in IT since 1993. Made a few stops at companies you'd recognize and a whole bunch of other companies you wouldn't. All my contact info is down there, but don't worry about that because there's a QR code for this link to these slides at the end. So I'm here to talk about network policy resources and propose some best practices. Actually, I found out, well, I'll get to that in a second. The goal is to allow users to easily implement secure network policy for chart-installed apps. There are some constraints on that goal. There's always a few constraints. We don't want to violate the principle of least surprise. We don't want to do something by default that breaks a lot of people's installed apps, cuts them off, a default deny that overrides things that they've allowed. But we do want to give them security the easy way, make it easy for them to turn on the things that they do want to turn on and secure their cluster the way they want to secure it. And we also want these things to be composable with network policies from other apps so that charts aren't stomping on each other. So it turns out that if you go out and look, there isn't really any documentation about this yet, but there is one guy. I don't know, is Dan Osborne here? I don't know. But anyway, there's a guy named Dan Osborne, OzDanborn on GitHub, and he's actually been doing a lot of this stuff in the charts that he's been submitting, and he's been submitting PRs for this. So the first three things are, there should be a master network policy .enabled value, and if it's set to false, we don't install any network policy resources. Same thing we do for RBAC right now. We want to have a policy manifest per app component. This is part of the composability thing. And then I would like to see, and Dan does this, an optional flag that's on by default to choose whether or not to allow external traffic. So if you have it on, then external traffic is allowed into the port. If it's turned off, it's set to false, or it's not set, then only traffic from specially labeled pods is allowed to contact this pod or this set of pods. So those three are already out there. The additional thing I'd like to see done is put in an optional deny all policy, so that if people are installing a bunch of apps purely through charts, we don't make them to have them set up a secure cluster. We don't make them go in and submit the default deny policy manually. They can just turn it on for any one of their charts, and then it'll get installed automatically for them. But we don't want to do that by default, because if we do that by default, then we run the risk, like I said, of cutting people off from their own apps, and that would be ugly. So proposed next steps, we should document what Dan Osborne's already done as best practices. We should look through the stable chart network policy implementations, because there are other people contributing to this. Nobody as frequently as him, but there are other people. And see if there's anything else besides what I've covered here or what Dan's done to add, or maybe people are doing things we don't want them to do. And then we should say, no, we shouldn't do that. We should do this differently. And then set up some kind of further ongoing discussion. The couple things that occurred to me are, we probably need to talk about egress filtering. Network policy could change in Kubernetes in the future, and we would have to make sure that whatever changes happen there are reflected in our best practices. There are probably any number of things that I haven't thought of that maybe some of you have thought of or have worked with or battled with. And I wanted to say thanks to Otimo for sending me here. Thanks to my team lead, Sam Brown at Otimo. He was the guy that originally suggested, hey, there's this thing called Helm. You should write a Helm chart. And here I am, 8 months later. And thank you for listening. And there's a link to the slides, and there's a QR code that if you scan it will take you to that same link. So thank you very much.